Hello.
Hello.
Falcon fans. How are you, Alex?
I'm great. Hello.
So
hi, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. This is Alex, and she's the founder of the Bay Area chapter of the Feminist Bird Club, and she's going to join us as moderator, bird expert, and help us answer some questions. I'm Lynn Schofield, ornithologist with the Institute for Bird Populations.
I'm Sean Peterson, and I'm mostly going to be watching our son for this and driving the camera. So you can see the camera moving around. That's me.
Yeah, since the human and the falcon kids are so so active and so loud right now, Sean is going to be making sure that the webcam is going to be focused on some baby falcons for this whole thing.
That sounds amazing. That's great.
Right. So it sounds like we have some people that are coming in who are members of the Feminist Bird Club, but not necessarily Cal Falcon watchers. So to introduce the Cal Falcons, we are the Cal Falcons. Annie and Grinnell are the two adults. They live on and you can hear the tolling of the clock tower now. So tolling
well
for
timed.
on time. Anyway, so Annie and Grinnell are the two adult falcons that live on the Campanile at the UC Berkeley campus. They joined the campus. They were freshmen back in 2017 when they had their first nest site, and this is their fourth set of chicks now that they've had this year. Poppy, Redwood, and Sequoia are the names of the three chicks right now, which we crowdsourced those names and had that voted on by the public. But yeah, we've been watching them for the last several months, and they're getting ready to fledge, as you can see on the bottom of the stream, in less than a week. And so, Alex, you introduced the Feminist Bird Club to us for the...
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. So, yeah, as Lynn said, I'm Alex. I go by she, her. I am the co-founder of the Feminist Bird Club chapter here in the San Francisco Bay Area, but there are chapters all over the country, including some even in other countries, including Canada and the Netherlands. The first chapter was established in New York City in 2016. And the basic premise is that we're a birdwatching club that's specially dedicated to creating a welcoming environment in the outdoors for folks who identify as LGBTQ+, women, Black and Indigenous people of color, and people of color. And we also do some fundraising to help support different historically underserved groups. So every year we pick a couple of organizations toward which the sale of our patch go to. So this year we have the Transgender Variant and Intersex Justice Project, which is actually a San Francisco-based organization, and Make the Road New York, which is a New York-based organization, both of which focus on gender non-heteronormative groups and others, and rights for people in those groups. And I can talk more about that, but we also, of course, spend a lot of time bird watching. And so Lynn has actually led some really great walks for us here in the Bay Area that people have loved in the East Bay. And a lot of what we do is just create a really welcoming environment for people. Our group often has new birders, people who've never, picked up binoculars to look at a bird before. We often hand out loaners. So it's been a really great thing to be doing. So that's us. Yeah. Is there anything else you want
to know? Yeah, I guess I just want to say that part of why I love the Feminist Bird Club is you guys really are so welcoming and inclusive, and I've loved leading walks for you guys, and I kind of hope, you guys have the same mission as Cal Falcons, which is to bring the love of nature to everybody. But should we start in on a couple questions?
Absolutely, yeah. I would love to start with a few questions. I see questions rolling in. There was an important one, which is, of course, what is the name of your son, Lynn?
And that my son's name is Vireo, after the songbird. Both me and my husband are ornithologists, so we felt that it was a good idea to have a kid named after a songbird. And just for your info, Alex, you can click on questions and they will
Oh, there it
show
is.
up in the bottom. Isn't that a nice little format there?
I don't know.
And if you click it a second time, it will hide questions again in case stuff is blocking our
Sorry, there's a bit of a lag. Yeah, I think I can't actually do that because I'm not moderator. Because I'm trying to click and it's not.
Okay. Well, you can ask questions anyways.
Yeah.
We can just talk.
Yeah. All right.
Because that might block the triplets anyways. It'll be better to just have you ask.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, they're looking huge. All right, so I'm gonna go toward the top. There's a lot of excitement. It sounds like we have a lot of really hardcore Falcon fans, which is really amazing. One of the questions is, where is Annie? Someone we haven't seen, Cooking for Gen Z hasn't seen her in several days.
Okay, so the answer to that is, so me and my husband were recently on campus actually, which we have not been on campus for a very long time, but I took a couple pictures and I'll post them. Annie and Grinnell are there and they are on the Campanile, but they are just out of reach of the kids right now. And that is because the kids are now the same size as the adults and very hungry and spend a lot of time begging for food. So they're keeping an eye out for threats and they're dropping off food when they need to. But otherwise, they're giving the kids their space to move around, practice running around, get their wings in good shape as they do their flapping. So Annie and Grinnell are around, but we're not seeing them on camera too much, and they're kind of letting the kids have their space.
Is there more space here than there typically is in like a nest in the wild? Because when I've seen falcon nests in the wild, very often they're like, a small cliffside thing and they're kind of, more contained.
Yeah, that's actually one of the wonderful things about this webcam is they do have a lot more space than they usually would at a nest site. And so usually what would happen at this point, the young falcons would probably start roaming around just like they are now, but instead of having a nice runway right near their box, they'd probably start roaming around on, rocky ledges, falling down a little bit and that sort of thing. So it really is, I think, a benefit for them to have this space. And I think that's part of why it's such a nice nest site for Annie and Grinnell. And it's a great site for us to watch them as they get bigger like this. It gives us more time to see them. And it also, last year, it proved that the juveniles, even after fledging, kept coming back because it was a good place to roost and spend time.
Very cool. I have so many more questions, but I'm going to let other people ask the questions. So Alice is asking, why does Poppy seem to spend so much time away from the siblings? She says, I'll be sorry to see them go. They all filled my heart with love.
I know, I'm going to be so sorry to see them go. And again, I hope that like last year's chicks, Carson and Cade, that they're going to, even after they learn to fly, come back for, I think Carson and Cade came back for almost a month occasionally to the Campanile to eat, to perch, to rest. And so hopefully we'll still see them around for a little while. But to answer the question, so Poppy is quite a bit bigger than her siblings, just as female peregrine falcons are larger and tend to be more aggressive. And of course, the more aggressive is not a rule across the board, but it seems like Poppy, that is the case. So that's probably part of it. The brothers probably are keeping out of her way a little bit. And also just animals, they're not all the same. You can't, make a statement that is true necessarily of every single peregrine falcon in the world. And so Poppy has quite a personality, it turns out. And it also seems like she's the one that likes to spend her time a little bit more alone.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I don't know if you know, but there's a group called the Galbatrosses who organized a female bird day officially for this whole weekend. So if anyone's following along and you can, you know, list your sightings of female birds, including Poppy, I think, with the hashtag I saw a bird. Speaking of which, like, can we actually, you know, presumably you know which one of these is Poppy, because I'm not familiar enough.
So Poppy is the one right now who's hanging out alone.
True to form.
I believe. The three are banded, and we put, there's two bands. One's a metal aluminum band that has a 9-digit serial number on it in case the birds are captured for some reason or found dead, because it's very tiny, but it's nationwide bands. And on the other leg is a visual ID band with larger numbers that you could see through binoculars.
Mm-hmm.
But for this phase, we also put a little bit of colored tape on the bands. Redwood has blue tape. Sequoia has gold tape, and then Poppy doesn't have any tape on the band. So that's a good trick if you don't have them immediately next to each other to judge sizes.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely hard to tell the size right now, but that's really cool. She's the one over there. That's awesome. Let's see. We have a 3-part question from Kim. Why do the juveniles have brown plumage and gray beaks? And when will they change to their adult colors? And does their juvenile coloration signal sexual maturity to other peregrines?
So there's a few reasons why juvenile birds tend to have different coloration than their adult counterparts. And one reason is practical, that the browner coloration is a little bit more discreet than the slatey gray.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not quite as dramatic as it is, some songbirds, the adults will be, bright red like a tanager, but the juveniles will be more of an olive. So it's partially that, and it's partially so the juvenile birds, they have grown in all of their feathers. People have been watching Cal Falcons for a long time. The juveniles grow in all their feathers pretty much within 2 weeks. And so the feathers that grow in as juveniles are just physiologically coming in differently than the adult feathers. And so the pigmentation, browner pigmentation, is easier to develop. And then they're not going to get their adult feathers until next year. Birds of prey. Oh, lost my volume and can't hear me. Is that me or Alex that we lost?
I can hear you.
Okay. And I can hear you.
We lost, but someone else lost us. If folks, let's see. If someone else can corroborate that, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, we'll troubleshoot if we get another message that confirms the problem is on our end. Anyways, birds of prey and a lot of species of birds only grow in new feathers once a year. And so the kids, all right, it sounds like the problem's on Kristen Davids's end. So hopefully you can get that worked out. Anyways, they'll grow in new feathers once a year for the body feathers. And that's when they'll get their blue feathers in is next year and the new feather growth. And that will probably happen in the fall. Fall or potentially into winter. And so that means next year, this time, they'll still have their original brown juvenile feathers. And it does not necessarily signal sexual maturity. You can have a breeding individual that still has its juvenile plumage. That's relatively uncommon that a bird that young is able to find and defend its territory that early, although it does happen. For example, at the PG&E falcon nest right now, a new male came in, and that bird's still in juvenile plumage, but seems to be there ready to raise chicks with I think Val is the name of the female at PG&E.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, there was some drama at the PG&E Falcon nest.
Does that mean he displaced the previous male, or did
He did displace the previous male, yes.
Wow, young are taken over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I read that the average age of them starting to breed is somewhere around 2 or 3. Is that closer to what's typical?
Yeah, that's a lot more common. A juvenile, it usually just doesn't have the level of experience needed to get and defend a nest and keep a mate.
Wow. Wow. So while we're talking about sort of the development of plumage, one of the questions is from someone who started watching the webcam only a few days ago, Francisca James Hernandez. And they're wondering if you could give a synopsis of the development of the baby falcons over the past few weeks. I know that when I saw the banding video, which was amazing, everyone should go watch it, when the chicks got banded a couple of weeks ago, they were still in their downy white plumage.
Yeah, it happens really fast. And so the banding day, okay, so they were born April 18th. They're only a month old right now. They grow up fast. They grow up real fast.
Yeah.
And so they started, the eggs are about that big. They're not that much different than the size of a chicken egg. And so they went from baby chicken size to this size in the last month. And so we banded them. So the first thing that develops to full size on a peregrine falcon is the legs and the feet. And that's because that's one of the most important parts of a peregrine falcon.
And is that because that's what they're using to catch prey?
It's what they'll use to catch prey, so that needs to be pretty well developed. And it's also what they're using even before they fledge to potentially defend themselves if they need to. Their defense strategy, if something came while they were still rather little, is to flip up and display their talons. And so then, since then, they've really gone from little fluff balls. Yeah, so we band the moment that their legs are fully sized so we can put on a fitting band, but while they're still in their downy feathers, so they're not able to try to fly or get scared and move around the campanile or something like that. And yeah, so since then, they have, increased in body mass pretty quickly since then to full size. And that's when they start growing in all the adult wing and body feathers, because as I said, the feathers only grow once a year. So they have to be the full adult size before they can have fully adult sized feathers ready to go for flying.
Yeah, that's just so amazing. I always like to sort of think about what would happen if, like Vireo grew to full size within 4 weeks. And how fast that is.
It feels that way. It feels that
way. And speaking of their development, someone's asking, will the chicks fly on the same day?
They will not. So the average time from hatching to flying is somewhere between 40 to 45 days. And it's a matter of, during that window, once they have all their feathers developed, it's a matter of when they're ready. And the males tend to be ready a little sooner than the females, because the males will have reached their full body size a little sooner than the females.
They've got less to grow. They're smaller.
Yeah, so they don't quite have as much to grow. And our fledglings here might take a little longer than others just because they have that open space around the campanile. Oh no, I lost Alex for moderating. So yeah, we have a group of people that goes out during the week or so that it takes the falcons to all fledge to make sure that when they make that first flight, they don't land in the middle of the road or somewhere unsafe to put them back. But that means that fledge watch often extends for up to a week as we wait to see how those first flights go. Yeah. Do we have you back, Alex? All right. And so just since I was on this question, kind of generally is, how do they know when they're ready? Is it just instinct? And I'm just going to say right now that that's a good question that I don't 100% know the answer to. They will have been flapping their wings a lot before they make that first jump, and so I think they're able to judge if they kind of have the muscle strength. If for some reason they felt unsafe at the nest site, they fledge sooner than they would later. When they feel safer, they're more likely to kind of stick back until they feel fully ready. Instinct is a word that is sort of a tough one, because I think even in, an animal like a peregrine falcon that does need a lot less time to learn than, of course, a human, there's still some interaction with their siblings, some interaction with their parents that, they've learned. And the adults will, if it's starting to take a long time, start to encourage them. They'll start vocalizing. At the young, they'll start delivering food to not all the way to the campanile, but somewhere close, so that the young start to become more motivated to move. All right, do we have you back, Alex?
Yay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I got you back.
Yay. Not sure what happened.
No, I think all of us in this moment of online communication understand the nature of the occasional
yeah, that is
getting knocked off.
The story of our lives these days. Thanks for letting me back in. Sorry about that. And thanks for catching some more questions. There's a few questions. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Get back to moderating.
All right. There's a few questions here about food. So one of them is, how can they live without drinking water, and what kinds of birds do they kill and eat?
So they don't regularly drink water, and it's because they are actually getting plenty of moisture from the tissues of their prey. There's a lot of moisture in it, and birds are, as you'll notice, birds don't pee, they just poop, and the uric acid that would normally come out as pee in a mammal is not coming out with a whole lot of water like it does in us, so they don't need quite as much liquid as a mammal might, for example.
And partly that's an adaptation to help them keep their weight down, right, for flying?
Yes, yeah, it's an adaptation for, mostly you don't have to carry around that extra weight. And if you watch Annie and Grinnell now, and you'll probably notice in the chicks even more so, when they start to fly, they will poop right before taking off.
Mm-hmm.
You keep that load as low as possible.
Yeah.
And then the other half of the question is, what kind of birds are they catching?
That's right.
And so lately, we've been noticing Annie and Grinnell bringing back a lot more variety in the kinds of birds. We had, for example, a Wilson's warbler yesterday. There's been woodpeckers and blackbirds. Which prior to now, we've mostly been seeing pigeons, and that's because Annie and Grinnell have been bringing back something that's easy for them to pull apart and give little pieces to the chicks. But now, since the chicks are getting more developed, they're getting smaller things given to them. But, into adulthood, what will these chicks learn to hunt? And peregrine falcons have been known to catch anything from as small as a hummingbird to as large as a sandhill crane. So that's pretty much the full spectrum of bird size. We know for a fact that one of the chicks from 2 years ago Larry, short for Laurentian. She lives on Alcatraz now, and she regularly is eating Canada geese and gulls.
Wow, some good eating.
So yeah, so what they'll learn to hunt is going to be probably what they encounter the most, and it could be almost anything.
Yeah, I think I was reading also that peregrines in general are among the most widely distributed invertebrates in the world. And so
Yeah.
they seem to have adapted to a variety of habitats, which means a variety of food sources. So it's not like they'll just eat, North American birds or anything like that.
Yeah, pretty much they're distributed anywhere that isn't covered in ice 100% of the time.
Right, which is really impressive.
Yeah. And anywhere they need at least a little something to put a nest on top of, although sometimes it'll be low as just like a little mound of rocks.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that in the wild where it looks pretty hard, but they make do. Really impressive. And I think they probably also develop different feeding strategies. A friend of mine watches them out in off the bay in San Francisco and has seen a peregrine chasing birds out into the water and isolating them, and then catching them once they get tired and they're way out by themselves. And not every bird has the space to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a common hunting strategy for the falcons close to the ocean, because their adaptation is to go as fast to dive on things, and that's hard to do if there's obstacles in their way. So getting prey out towards the ocean is the perfect strategy if a falcon can do it.
That's really cool. Susan is asking whether Annie has lost weight because she looks lean. We're not looking at Annie right now, but presumably Susan has seen Annie.
So birds can gain and lose weight very, very quickly. Like migratory birds can build up, in shorebirds, they can build up nearly a third to a half of their weight in fat within a few days to get ready for migrations. It's not that dramatic in a peregrine falcon, but they can still gain and lose weight very quickly. I'd be willing to bet, and I don't know this for sure, but I'd be willing to bet now that Annie is out hunting more, she wants to be carrying around less weight, so she's probably got rid of any fat that she's built up in order to sit on her young and spend more time not hunting for herself. So it is possible Annie's skinnier. I don't really know. It's hard for me to judge that for myself.
Yeah, it's often hard with feathers to really gauge body mass.
That wouldn't be an indication necessarily of poor health, though. That's part of bird physiology, that they can gain and lose large amounts of weight very quickly, because sometimes they want that extra weight to get them through more, times like migration especially, but also raising young, whereas otherwise they want to keep themselves as light as possible to fly and maneuver most effectively.
Yeah. And there's another feeding question further down, which is whether the parents will continue to feed them after they fledge.
Yes, the parents will continue to feed them for probably over a month, because the first little while after they fledge, they have no idea how to hunt. This is something they need to learn. And so the parents will continue to bring them food, and early on after they fledge, the parents will bring them food more or less the same as they always have, and they'll just bring it to wherever the young have flown to. And then as the young get a little better at flying and maneuverability, they'll start delivering food mid-air and making the chicks come and grab it from them, and eventually start dropping it for the chicks. So they'll make it increasingly difficult for the chicks to get the food, so they learn to hunt for themselves. But they'll continue feeding them for, by the standards of how quickly a peregrine falcon develops, a good amount of time.
Yeah.
And Yeah, the chicks might even continue to beg for food long after they've become pretty adept at hunting, and eventually the parents will have to start to even chase them off and discourage them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so that sort of speaks to the question too of whether the parents encourage them to, when they're fledging, to try flying, try eating. It seems like they do sort of help them out, nudge them along.
Yeah, yeah. So they're not. Yeah, the parents definitely do some work to nudge them along, especially with bribes with food, and then withholding food later.
Yeah.
Although I did see someone ask if, do Annie and Grinnell like kick them out of the nest site, and they won't physically push the issue necessarily, although sometimes the siblings will a little bit.
It's time to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a question here from Magnus H4. Why are their eyes black?
Why are their eyes black? Man, good question.
Are they black when they fledge and into adulthood?
Yes, peregrine falcons. As far as I know, almost all falcons have black eyes throughout their life. I could take a guess that melanin is probably, really useful in the conditions they hunt in, which is wide open space and potentially over, again, something like the ocean where there'd be a lot of glare. Mm-hmm. So there'd be an advantage to having darker pigment. That's part of why they have the very dark pigment under their eyes too, is to kind of help with absorbing some of the sunlight and dealing with the glare.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Sort of like the warrior paint.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I mean, it's true because other raptors have, yellow eyes and yeah. So that's a great question. Thank you for asking that, Magnus. Let's see. And we're starting to get into behavior a little bit. Do sibling falcons know not to mate with each other when mature?
Usually sibling falcons are not going to be returning to their original home territory. So the odds of them as, they disperse looking for new territories is they're not going to end up going back to the same places. I think if they did, separate, it's been a couple years on and they both end up back in the same place, I don't think they'd actually know to avoid each other.
It's more about the dispersal. They just fly off to different parts.
Yeah. I would guess that they might end up doing it if they coincidentally ended up dispersing, traveling some distance and going to the same place. But they do, when looking for nest territories split up initially, they try to avoid it.
Yeah, interesting. I think I read that there was some speculation that, because peregrines, some are also migratory, like a good number of them are migratory, that they might migrate in family groups, like of siblings, which I thought was
they will stick. And so there's not a lot of studies about this because it's hard to track the young birds right after they come out of the nest, because when we banded the birds, they weren't full size, so it's harder to get a backpack onto them that would have a transmitter, because their body isn't the right size, so you wouldn't know what exactly the right size for the transmitter is yet. So there's not a ton of studies, but anecdotally, it seems like the siblings spend more than even just that first learn to hunt phase together right after they leave the nest. Yeah. But eventually they part ways.
Right. And speaking of establishing territory, Kim Long is asking, what's the average length of territory tenure for a peregrine?
If a peregrine falcon finds a territory that is advantageous, for example, the Campanile has worked really well for Annie and Grinnell, they will try to stay there for their entire lifespan. And so they'll stay there until another falcon gets interested in the territory and takes it over from them. And so it can be up to 10 or more years that they will maintain a territory.
Wow. Is it the same pair that maintains a territory or just the male?
It's the same pair, and actually the female tends to be more integral to defending the site. Although usually what it is if a female comes in, it will be just the female that gets replaced and the male will stay, and same vice versa. If a new male comes in and removes the existing male, that will be replaced and the female that was originally there will stay. So they're not necessarily, they sort of mate for life, but
more like with their territory and their property.
Yeah, but it's really a matter of whether their property remains in their hands. And although they will occasionally, if a new male that comes in and takes over the territory is not one that the female is interested in mating with, she will chase off that potential partner.
Oh, interesting. Do we know much about what it is that determines that selection? Like, what are they looking for in each other as mates?
So what a female is looking for in a male is whether they're capable of delivering enough food to feed both her and the chicks while they're incubating and then while they're young. And so that's part of why in the first, even before that Annie would have laid eggs, Grinnell will be bringing food to Annie and be the only one hunting for some period of time even before eggs are laid.
Yeah, that makes sense, since that's what's going to need to happen to make the brood successful. We have a question. What is the average brood size that survives till fledging? And what % of those chicks survive in general?
So the max number of eggs that a pair of peregrine falcons will lay in a year, assuming it's, the same pair and something didn't happen to one of the eggs, will be 5. And that's the maximum. 4 is a lot more typical. And usually something will happen to 1 or 2 eggs in between laying and hatching. And so I think 3 on average will end up being laid, 3 or 4, and then 2 on average will end up hatching. And then between hatching and fledging, there's pretty high survivorship. Usually they'll make it to the age of fledging. And then fledging is kind of the most dangerous part of their life because that first few flights has so much potential for getting into a dangerous space, finding a perch that ends up being exposed to something like great horned owls overnight. Hitting windows is a common cause of mortality in urban settings. That's actually how one of Annie and Grinnell's children was lost, is they hit a window on the first day of fledging.
Wow, the first day.
Yeah, it was really tragic.
Do you get to capture there was a question in here about whether you got to capture the first flight on video. Obviously, probably not the window strike, but once they go.
So we do have, when we do the fledge watch, we do have a few people who are pretty skilled photographers and videographers that are part of the fledge watch crew. And so we definitely have gotten some really good photographs of first flights in the past, and we will try to get video if we can. It's hard because from below it can be difficult to see the moment when they take that first flight.
Right.
Usually what you end up seeing, usually what happens is you hear them and you hear the adults making noises. They
quite vocal.
So, but I hope we can get some good images and good video of the first flights for people to share with people.
That's awesome. Do you, there was a question in here that I've lost track of who asked, but whether you have thoughts on who will fly first?
Let's see. I feel like Sequoia has been doing a lot of running around and flapping, so that's going to be my guess. It will almost certainly be one of the two boys, since Poppy's bigger and not going to quite get full size as early as the boys. She's less likely to be the first out. But yeah, so I'm going to put money on Sequoia, but that's just a wild guess. I don't know.
Yeah. How far apart will they leave the nest?
Usually it's maybe 3 or 4 days longer than it might take the females. But it could be a couple days even between the males.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So it can be. There's another pair that the Fledge Watch team who's going to be working with, keeping an eye on. These birds next week they were watching a group of falcons, and I think it was 8 days between the first male fledging and the female, the last bird to fledge. So it can be a while.
That's interesting because I think I remember seeing in the cam that they actually hatch more close to each other in time. Is that right?
Yeah.
So they're starting at the same point.
They are starting at the same point, yeah. So the first 2 of our eggs hatched on the same day, and then the last egg hatched about 24 hours later, which is pretty typical. Peregrine falcons don't start incubating until almost all the eggs are laid, so they hatch at about the same time. So they hatch at about the same time and kind of grow at the same rate and are at the same stage.
Right. You had mentioned that we knew that one of the previously fledged birds ended up on Alcatraz, and so Helena is asking, is there a tracking device on the bands?
There is not, and I would dearly love to be able to put tracking devices onto bands. Right now, there aren't any tracking devices that are quite that small. It is just because of those visual identification bands, the black bands with the large numbers on it, that people were able to recite the falcon and see what those numbers were. So that was a ranger at Alcatraz who tipped us off to where Larry was, and they've been keeping an eye on her since, although we haven't gotten to hear any updates about Larry since March because Alcatraz has been closed. But I hope to hear that she had chicks that are doing well.
Yeah. There, a lot of people have been asking me whether we think that birds are doing better because there's less human sort of invasion of space.
Yeah. And that's a good question. And I think for, most species of birds, less interaction from humans is always better. The peregrine falcons, it's probably different because, of course, they're not nesting in places where humans would be directly interacting with them anyways. A little less traffic might help with that first fledging process.
Right.
But yeah,
and it makes me curious too, because there are certain birds that benefit from human trash. Like really touristy sites like Alcatraz, wondering what the dynamics end up looking like when there are no meals and French fries to steal.
and I suppose for Larry on Alcatraz, maybe there are fewer gulls there with fewer tourists there, although that's kind of hard to say. It might actually be easier because with fewer tourists there, there's more opportunities to get the gulls in a better position for hunting.
Yeah, for sure. So a couple of people have been asking about the mess that's created at this nest site here at the Campanile, and is it safe for them, and what happens to it?
So it is. I mean, it's mostly safe for them. The bird poop is relatively innocuous, and there is some species of parasites that will start spending time around nests that have been present long term, and there's like a lot of buildup of feathers. But in the case of this nest site and a lot of nest sites, once it starts to rain, most of that will get washed out quite a bit. And then the Campanile falcons actually have a deluxe situation, because in the winter, once everyone's gone and the adults are spending more of their time away from campus and downtown, we actually come up and do a thorough cleaning up. One, because it's, you know, not bad for the falcons to have that, and two, because campus facilities really appreciates having that space cleaned so the drains don't get clogged after years of it.
Yeah. So that sort of answers some of the questions about whether they come back to this site. I know you mentioned earlier that some of the first year birds will come back, but they're not spending so much time there. They're sort of recreating the mess that's there now.
Yeah.
And there's a question from Maddie Ophelia about if there's anything citizens can do to help to reduce window strikes. Maddie says, we live on the ground floor, so I don't know that it matters, but if stickers or something would help, I'd like to do what I can.
Yeah, and I feel like I should have like a better statement about this prepared, because it is something that people can do that really can help with the birds. And, you know, for the peregrine falcons, they might not be, you know, a danger of hitting the ground floor, but a songbird, that's a songbird that still does remain a problem. There are bird safe coatings and treatments that you can put onto glass, and they also sell some stickers that work pretty effectively. There's, you know, ones that you can see and have a design, but there's also ones that are clear to the human eye, but to a bird eye stand out because they reflect more of a UV coloration, which birds are able to see into that ultraviolet spectrum of light. Another thing that can help is to not have, and this is in the case of songbirds, to not have what looks like to them a potential space to move through. So having potted plants like right next to the window, where it gives the illusion that there might be a spot to perch right away. But yeah, send us a message through one of our social media platforms or through our website, and I can get you more of those resources, since I didn't prep the answer to that question as well as I should have.
There's also, I think that's really helpful. I have purchased stickers in the past in other places where I've lived, but there's also things that folks are trying to do at the sort of city, state, and even national level to try to really, you know, affect office buildings, which are a huge problem for birds like the peregrines, these tall buildings, lots of glass, lots of light. And there is work by Golden Gate Audubon Society, for example, that's made, I think, Berkeley and a few other East Bay cities sort of pass bird-friendly ordinances such that all new buildings are, I don't know if it's a requirement, and I can also look that up, or a strong suggestion, but that windows be coated with certain reflective material.
And when you're putting in new windows, you can actually select types of glass that have that same characteristic, that to the bird is less reflective and less likely to give the illusion that it might be a place that they can fly into.
Yeah, and I think it's equally important to sort of nudge our legislators and our office building owners as it is to protect our very own windows, because a lot of times.
The other issue that comes up, and this is again for songbirds, is that large office buildings that leave windows open, or not windows open, that leave lights on overnight, that's actually a big threat to migratory birds, because small migratory songbirds tend to migrate at night. And so the lit up office buildings tend to be a danger, because that will disorient them and attract them towards those lit areas.
Yeah, perhaps like famously the Twin Towers Memorial in New York City that's lit up during migration season on September 11th has a bunch of volunteers including folks who are part of the Feminist Bird Club, who watch the lights. So there are these two lights that stream upward into the sky, and they're beautiful. I'm from New York. I was there on 9/11. It's a gorgeous memorial, but it definitely interferes with migration patterns, and birds will start to gather in these lights and just circle and circle by the thousands. And at some point, the volunteers are there all night to count them, and at some point when it reaches a certain number, they actually turn the lights off to let them disperse. So it really is a big trap. Not just one thing. There's a few questions about viewing the falcons. So what are the best times to view them? And if you're wanting to take photos, is there a building or high location around campus that provides a good viewing location?
Yeah, and so I just need to, put this out first because, of course, the, whole COVID situation. Usually we'd have Fledge Watch as like a public event and have binoculars for people to use and our scopes out. And of course, it can't be like that this year. And people who are doing Fledge Watch right now, we're all remaining very separate from one another. And so campus policy, it does sound like the campus grounds, and someone can correct me, remain open to people who are, getting important outdoor exercise, and bird watching can be part of that. So I think it is all right for people to join, but we really, really, really encourage people to respect distancing requirements. But anyways, so we've done Fledge Watch. It's hard to know which side of the Campanile they're going to take those first jumps out of the Campanile, but the steps outside of, I think it's Bancroft Library, have been an all right spot to wait. The west side of the Campanile has been good, and outside of the geology building, of course, I spend time on campus, and the only buildings I know the names of are like the Life Science Building. Go figure. Let's see. But I'm going to say that anywhere where you have a clear view of the Campanile is going to be an okay candidate. You often are able to see them as they peek through the little fleur-de-lis patterns. You can see where they are. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of options. But again, I need to stress that we need to be really respectful of any campus ordinances. If people ask you or us to leave, respect that, please.
Yeah, absolutely, especially important right now. We have a few updates from people who have news from Alcatraz, so a couple of corrections too. Christina Tarr says that in regard to my comment about gulls eating trash, Christina says that no food is allowed beyond the dock on Alcatraz, so there isn't a huge trash problem. So that's probably not super different. And that breeding gulls actually seem to eat less trash and more fish, which makes absolute sense given the millennia of evolution that they've gone through. And Nina Bai has said that she heard from an Alcatraz ranger that they believe Larry and her partner have actually chicks this year.
Wonderful, good to hear. Yeah, last I heard that they were potentially on eggs and acting like they were nesting, but I haven't heard anything since the stay-in-place order had been put into effect.
Yeah. And there's more questions about food. Right now, can you tell us where the birds are? Are they on the north side or on the west side?
The nest box is on the west side, and there you can see the nest box in the corner of the screen there.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah. I've never actually in person been to that site, so I'm also a little bit. I just know the camera view.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And are there issues still with drones? Apparently this was an issue earlier.
Yeah, it was an issue earlier. We had several instances where drones were up near the Campanile, but since we kind of alerted campus facilities and, kind of spread the word around social media, I think it got through to people that the drones are potentially detrimental to the falcons, especially if the falcons try to defend their territory from the drone, dive on it, and have some sort of injury. But yeah, so we haven't had any more problems with drones as far as I know. So I guess thanks to people who may have successfully gotten the word out and made sure that that harassment stopped.
Yeah, that's great. It's one of the downsides, I guess, of being in the middle of an urban environment is all the human interaction. Actually, and we're almost ready to go, but I have one quick question, which I was wondering, which is how much human interaction do these birds actually see? Because there was the banding event. How often are scientists going in there, or is that just a one-time thing?
So we go up to band once a year for the chicks, and then once a year we'll go up in the winter when Annie and Grinnell are typically away from the tower and the juveniles are long since moved on to clean the site, but that's the only 2 times we go up into the Campanile on this level.
Gotcha. So they're not really getting exposed
No.
very often. They were very alarmed when the scientists were up there.
Yes, they were very alarmed. Annie and Grinnell are great defenders.
They are.
Yeah, and luckily, since the process is pretty quick, Annie and Grinnell interpret that their actions have successfully repelled the potential threat and feel relatively confident that things are fine, and this is part of why we have to keep interaction down to a pretty minimum amount.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's watching this video right now. It's amazing watching one of the chicks just like laying on his belly. You were talking about how their feet are the first to develop and they need to be really strong, but he's just chilling.
Yeah. I think it's a little warm up there right now, so I think getting close to the ground sometimes is a little cooler.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then people are starting to get ready for next year. So about what date do Annie and Grinnell get started with laying and incubating so that folks can start to tune next year?
Yeah, so they laid in mid-March this year. Mm-hmm. But we're already starting courtship and copulation in February, and we are seeing them pretty regularly around the Campanile in February already. And they're actually, you'll see them occasionally on and off year-round around campus. So for people who are around campus, you'll sometimes hear them. And again, since me and my husband spend a lot of time working on campus, normally we often check the webcams if we heard them vocalizing on a given day.
Mm-hmm. So the webcams are on the entire time, or just since February?
Yeah, we're leaving the webcams on through the winter.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. Very cool. And who gets to clean the bell tower?
That would be kind of the core Cal Falcons team. So this can be my need to do a shout out. It's me and my husband Sean. We do the social media stuff, and so we're the ones kind of showing up. But we have Mary Malik, who's really our major falcon expert and has been doing work monitoring the falcons of the Bay Area for years and years. We have Alan Fish from the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory that has a lot of involvement. Doug Bell from the East Bay Regional Parks. Jan Ambrosini does a lot of volunteering with us for Fledge Watch. And so usually it's a few of us that comes up to do the cleaning each winter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like it's quite a bit of work.
Yeah.
And I guess as we sign off, is there anything that folks can do to support the Falcons? either specifically bees or in general?
Yeah, so these falcons, we have, you know, this whole setup has been a volunteer effort, and then all of the cameras have been paid for by community donations. We had sold T-shirts this year and had a lot of positive response by that.
Is that still happening?
I think so, yeah. We've actually had to, it was a fundraiser through Custom Ink, and we've had to reopen it a few times because of demand. So I think we still have, I still think we have some on sale. So if you want a Campanile Falcon t-shirt, that has been great for us to just maintain the equipment and that. And, but I think the bigger thing would be to help conservation, you know, overall. And I think, you know, there's a lot of little things that people can do to help with bird conservation. Just in terms of, you know, the bird-proof glass helps, planting gardens and trees that are positive for birds really makes a big difference. So, you know, native plants in your backyard. If you're going to plant a tree here in the Bay Area, select something like oak, ideally, that has, you know, a lot of value for native birds. If you're able to, it really helps for birds to keep cats indoors because they're a they're a big bird predator, and then just, yeah, you know, just little things like that can make a big difference.
Yep. And I'm also part of Golden Gate Audubon Society. I know, Lynn, you work with the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory. There's lots of volunteer opportunities.
Yes.
Whether that's for specific, if you really want to get either hands-on or with people or with birds, there's a lot to go around.
Yeah, there's some really good volunteer organizations. Yeah, I'll plug. I have my water in the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory mug, and they do hawk watch and bird banding and a ton of great research every fall. And I don't know what this fall is going to look like, but they accept volunteers, and you know, all that volunteer effort is absolutely terrific.
Yeah, and Golden Gate Audubon Society is actually currently running its annual fundraiser, although we're doing it entirely without in-person trips, which is usually what we do. But we're running an online auction with bird art. So that's going to end in a week or so. So if you want some bird art, check it out. There's definitely some raptors in there. Everybody, we're splitting a lot of the proceeds with artists 50-50 to sort of help with the times that we're in. So lots of things. All right. Well, it looks like we're a little bit past 5. Is there anything else you want to add before we go?
No, not necessarily, except I just want to, you know, thank this whole community that's built up around the webcams, because it's, you know, really rewarding for me to be able to, you know, share this with everyone. And I feel like it's been such a kind and supportive community. And, you know, I think all that positivity has really been good for me. I think it's been good for a lot of us. So thanks to everybody who's made this happen, and thanks for everybody who's been part of it.
Yeah, and thank you for doing this and sharing your knowledge and your time and with all of us. And we at Feminist Bird Club are especially grateful. I think especially in this time of social distancing, this has been, you know, these kinds of events have been really how we can connect to each other and to nature, and it's really been wonderful. There will be, folks are asking if there will be a recording. So you're going to post this recording up on YouTube, I believe, afterwards?
Yep. We'll post it onto our YouTube channel, and that's where we've been putting all our highlight clips in the last couple Q&As that we've done. It's of note that our YouTube channel is not the same channel that the Falcons are streaming on right now, but we're easy to Google. And it's on our website, which is calfalcons.berkeley.edu. So yeah, you can look for this there and all our other clips.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been so fun for me. Folks, a lot of thank yous coming in. I don't know if everyone can see the comments, but lots of thank yous, lots of love. People looking forward to next year.
And if there are any questions that we weren't able to get to now, find us on social media, or you can ask some questions at our website, and we'll get back to you with answers to questions as best we can.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Goodbye. It's been great.
Yeah. Have a good weekend, everyone.